Caregivers tell me that very often they don't get a lot of support or information. The physician might say, gee, your mom has Alzheimer's, or we think your mom has early stage Alzheimer's, or whatever the diagnosis happens to be. And perhaps they're handed a brochure. Perhaps they're told to come back in 2 or 3 weeks. Or perhaps they're just kind of left sitting there in shock. I think for many caregivers, it may not be a surprise when they finally hear the words Alzheimer's disease, but they don't know what to do next. And a lot of primary physicians don't really have the tools and resources to guide them. They give them the number of the Alzheimer's Association or perhaps a local support group, and that's where it's left. Primary physicians are very good at managing things like heart disease and diabetes and arthritis and other chronic illnesses that older people tend to experience. And when it comes to a disease that they can't really treat, they really don't know what to do, and they don't have a lot of support in place for these caregivers or for the people that perhaps are in the early stages that can make these decisions with them. At that point, I think people are often frustrated. They don't know where to turn. They don't know what to do. And they're in panic mode almost. They go home and say to themselves, well, now what? And there's no easy answer. Clinicians that give this diagnosis, I think, have to have almost a ready-made packet that can be given to the patient, given to the caregiver, to say, here are some common questions, here's how the disease might progress, here are some people you can call, here are some resources, and most importantly, here's what you need to know to maintain your sense of balance, to maintain your dignity, to maintain your quality of life. And I don't think physicians are educated in that in medical school, and I don't think they're educated well enough after medical school to provide the kind of clear direction that most families need. When a diagnosis is given, the prudent thing to do is to take a step back, take a deep breath, and to tell yourself it's not the end of the world. Relationships may change, but sometimes they can change for the better. Take time to take care of the important things, the financial, the legal paperwork, healthcare proxies. Those things should be addressed sooner rather than later. But Alzheimer's, because it's a progressive disease, gives you time to really figure out how to make the most of the time you and your loved one have together. There was a great story from one of the caregivers I spoke with whose wife was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And one of the things they did was to make sure that they did a lot of worldwide travel. They had a number of countries they wanted to visit on their bucket list. And once she was given her diagnosis with their physicians okay, they were able to spend a couple of years traveling around the world while they were still able to enjoy this quality time together. So I think what needs to be done is to really sit down and prioritize what's important to you, what's important to your loved one, and to take it day by day. If you look at Alzheimer's and you think 2, 3, 4 years out, it's scary, it's overwhelming. It's more important to think about today or tomorrow or next week or perhaps next month. What can be accomplished, what can't be accomplished, and not to get into this overwhelming rut where inertia sets in and nothing gets accomplished. It's also important, I think, to ask questions, and if you're not getting the answers you need, keep asking. If the clinician doesn't refer you to a support group, ask for a referral. Get into a support group that deals with other people that have been newly diagnosed. Sometimes the best way to learn is from others that have been there, and they can give you the tips, they can give you the advice, and they can also let you know you're not alone. there are other people that have been through what you're going through, whether it's the patient side or the caregiver side, and that there's a whole world out there that is still yours for the taking. I spoke to several people whose loved ones, whether it was a wife or a parent, had recently been diagnosed, and each had a very interesting story. Primarily, it was one of, what can I do? How can I take control? I think when people hear this diagnosis, they often feel lost, bewildered, and being proactive, getting involved, and being hands-on is almost therapy for some of the caregivers. It helps them maintain a sense of control, a sense of balance. I think the other thing they realized, particularly this one husband whose wife had early onset diagnosis, was that as long as possible, they were in it together. The decision-making process, the plans for the future, even to the point that if the time came to select an assisted living facility together, and to involve the person with the disease as much as possible in decision-making, because it helps them maintain a sense of control and that their life isn't totally falling apart. Talk to people. That was the biggest piece of advice. Talk to other people that have been in that situation and find out what's worked for them, what hasn't, where the good support groups are, and take advantage of them.